What industry is struggling more than people think? Story 1. MLMs. And that's a good thing. I think those things just evolved into other schemes that are just good at pretending that they are not MLMs. It's still easy to spot their BS though. A couple of those even appeared at Shark Tank, and they told the guy, dude, it's a pyramid scheme, and he kept saying, no, it's not. It's a cashback algorithm that works when other people join. All the MLM people I knew would post the most baffling photos of their business. I'm not sure if they don't realize there are people on their Facebook that have gone to business school, but showing a line graph you made of lives changed over time with a carefully placed latte in the background isn't really impressing anyone. A former liquor store associate got offered a job at Primerica by a customer. They liked my work ethic. I was a little glassy-eyed at first at the riches they flaunted, but after I did my research, I politely declined. It's not for me. MLMs. The second time he came into the store, he brought his life partner. He had her do the checkout process, and from the second he stepped inside to the second he left, he would not look in my direction. Refused to acknowledge my existence. I had crossed him by not supporting the MLM culture, and was therefore a problem to him. I hate MLMs for two reasons. Everyone hates an MLM person. They seem desperate. Let me just run around begging everyone I see for money. It's like standing out in front of a Walmart holding a sign, or worse, like Jehovah's Witnesses knocking at your door. Sorry to anyone that is a Jehovah's Witness. It's freaking annoying. Second, you have to have a vast network of people, and gullible people at that, from the start to make it work, and you'll spend years at the bottom making $100 a month before it becomes an autopilot income. Most people never make it to the top, so it takes forever and you barely make pennies. So the whole illusion of join us and you'll never work again is totally BS. You damn near need a degree in marketing to be successful. And for all that hassle, I think I'll just work my 9 to 5 for several years, save some money and start a real business. Story 2. I've been a professional video editor for the last 12 years and have never gone more than a week without a job. I've made stuff for many of the country's biggest brands and have a solid resume. For the first time in my life, I've been submitting resumes every single day for the last 4 months and have not had one interview. It's tough out there right now. Fingers crossed my luck takes a turn. Production manager here, going into month 3, but was also out of work February through April. I feel this is so hard. The collapse of our industry has been a devastating blow, and I have been applying to a remarkable quantity of jobs, probably at least 100 to 150 apps so far. Have had 3 interviews scheduled. In the second round of one of them, no idea how many weeks or how many rounds they'll pull me through. These companies know they have the time and resources to drag this process out. Working freelance production, I could get called about a job, interviewed on the spot, hired today, and start work tomorrow. So it is just a whirlwind to figure out. For whatever it's worth, I didn't start getting interview offers until I changed my resume to sound less filmy. I doubt that helps as an editor, but I thought I'd mention it. This is advertising in general as well. I realize that's not video, but our industry creates or used to create a ton more video content. Cutbacks in marketing budgets, reliance on crappy amateur productions and influencers, and a general race to the bottom, CF Coke's latest AI-generated spot, mean that there are armies of extremely experienced freelancers and creative professionals who are submitting resumes for the first time. Working in Europe, gotta say marketing is a total crap show right now. I mean, the whole management knows better how to do marketing than the marketing professionals thing has been brewing for a while, but I guess it's finally getting to the point where they don't even bother hiring anyone to tell them not to do the thing they suggest. What they are thinking is for both the video and copywriting, etc., why not let the AI do the heavy lifting and I can cut costs and make more profit and look better. In actual reality, this will probably come back to bite them in the arse in a year's time, at which point they can pop it on their CV and say they saved a company hundreds of thousands in costs and streamlining and move on, and it will be the company that suffers. There will be a resurgence for creative minds who have to let them suffer for a little bit while they have a shiny new toy. What the 2 top people in this particular response should do is have a chat. Start an agency and see if they can get their name out there, while they're waiting for full-time employment. It's easier to sign off on a $15K project than an $80K hire. I'm a producer/PM with enormous experience starting in locations/scouting decades ago, and I would not want to be a young person getting into the film industry today. I had a fantastic run, and as my career winds down and I move into semi-retirement, taking smaller budget projects that really interest me, I look at my crews and shake my head. They're screwed in the long run. The industry is being eaten alive. I really feel for the film industry in general, and the film crews in particular. Emergency medical services, paramedics and such. The people doing the work largely are hilariously underpaid. For every place offering $86,000 starting, there are 3 to 5 places trying to pay a critical care paramedic $18 an hour. The healthcare industry in general in the United States is at 5 minutes to midnight. Healthcare professionals are beaten down, overworked, and underpaid, and it only gets worse. Working in healthcare gets worse every year, and it is becoming harder and harder to retain people. Some change jobs, but many leave the field altogether. Small community hospitals are closing. Others are getting bought up by major health systems and getting turned into assembly lines where everybody gets algorithm care instead of practicing medicine. Executives are getting rich, but the healthcare system in the US is getting dangerously close to failing. Also, private equity's hands in healthcare, the most vulnerable patients especially. Most skilled nursing facilities are now owned by private equity, managed by people who view patients as numbers on paper, typically set foot in the building before they close the deal. After that, it's inadequate management and very little oversight. It's gross. Also buying rural hospitals, which then can fail, leaving essential deserts where there isn't adequate access to care. Where I live, they raised the county paramedic starting salary from $52 to $81K plus 5% for each year of experience up to 10 years, plus a percentage for education and second language. The surrounding counties were all around $35 to $50K, so paramedics fled in droves to my county. Paramedics were getting nearly $90K pay raises in some instances. That's life-changing money. Now they're fully staffed and the surrounding counties are having issues with EMS staffing shortages. Instead of raising their salaries to be competitive, they raised salaries to $50 to $60K and can't hire anyone. I was in EMS for almost a decade. I quit largely due to the pay and the trauma. I couldn't fall asleep at night because I had no idea if my upcoming workday was going to be full of dead babies or routine nursing home transfers. I could be in a Tyvek suit scooping up a liquefying corpse or playing therapist to a suicidal teen. It was always a roll of the dice. EMTs in my area usually start around $15 an hour. For 12-hour shifts, 48 scheduled hours a week, you often get out late because you have to finish the last call, even if it comes in 5 minutes before your out time. As a paramedic, the higher licensure level, after as much experience as I had, I was making about $24 an hour. Life outside of work was basically just surviving until the next shift. I've been in a completely different career field now for nearly 2 years. I make less, but my life is remarkably more balanced. I'm a BMET, and the entire healthcare industry is in trouble. The low pay and high stress of hospital work is not a combination that will attract, well, anyone. Where I work, we can't staff clinical engineering to full capacity because people just aren't interested. Why would a young person take a position as a BMET 1 in training at $25 an hour, where if you make a mistake on the right piece of equipment, someone can die as a result, when you can work for T-Mobile repairing cell phones for $22 an hour without that insane level of stress? Either way, you can't pay the frickin' bills though. Nobody is making enough. Story 4. Lineman for power lines. All the experience is retiring. It's a huge change right now. My brother-in-law is a lineman. He is 25 and most of the people he works with are in their 40s. There were 10 people in his class in school for it, and less in the last few years. The main reason is the insane hours they work, plus the conditions. Doesn't matter if it's 110 or -10 outside, he has to answer the call. Never mind the physical toll it has taken over the years. He has back and joint problems from doing it just 3 years ago. Plus the public. He's had the police called on him and his crew more than once because to fix power they regularly have to turn it off for others. Just for a while. People treat them like dirt when this happens. The money is amazing, but it really doesn't seem like it's worth it for most. To be fair, I attempted to get into my local utilities lineman program and they made absolutely no attempt to meet me in the middle, and were actually pretty hostile about my presence. My thoughts were that they were afraid of losing their jobs, but at the same time, who is going to replace them when they inevitably retire? To top it off, the utility was broadly advertising mentorship programs and huge sign-on bonuses, but they never attempted to actually hire anyone. Exactly, and honestly, most linemen don't even want the industry overstaffed. They want to have to travel for out-of-state storms. When I was in IBEW, the traveling linemen were getting paid around the clock while they were traveling for storms. It was possible they could bank insane money for a couple of weeks of work. They'd get their regular 8 hours of overtime, and they'd get triple pay for the last hours of the day, and anything over 60 hours or so for the week was triple pay. The guys who got into that program had dads, brothers, uncles, etc. who had already shown them how to use spikes, etc. The whole thing was set up so that they could select who they wanted without it appearing to be unfair. I knew a lot of people who tried to become linemen and just couldn't get past the first steps. This is one of those non-headline issues that suddenly became real for me. The new linemen are pressured to rush the job or too inexperienced to be patient when installing new transformers. The easy way to make sure customers don't complain is to set the voltage to be a bit high. But when every lineman is doing it, there is a cumulative effect. Unfortunately, some electronics are more sensitive to overvoltage. Heating elements. When your 220 volt line is continuously 235 volts, crap is gonna blow. There will be an increasing market for in-home power filtering soon. I'm in the wind/solar construction industry, and even on union jobs, linemen didn't get much work. It was typically inside wiremen. We had people making six figures, earning every penny because of the hours they worked, and of course, that's attractive. But I wonder how much this affects the electrical unions. We used to have trade jurisdiction disputes between millwrights and iron workers, and some of those guys hated each other. Just wondering if that goes on with electricity. Story 5. It's so crazy to read all these comments and personally remember a time when going to the mall, the movies, bowling, arcades, restaurants, museums, art fairs, etc. were all regular activities. And people were excited for Teacher Celebration Week because they loved their teacher so much and couldn't wait to give them their gift, some homemade, and riding your bikes around with your friends to go sit in a field somewhere and talk was the highlight of your day after school. I kinda wish the world would just slow down. Absolutely this. I have had this conversation with my partner a few times recently. The idea that you used to be able to just, for example, go ice skating without it being something you need to freaking save up for in the past is insane. Every activity is so highly monetized nowadays, and public spaces are so kid-unfriendly that I genuinely don't know what the hell kids are supposed to do anymore, other than scrolling on their phones and playing video games. Don't get me wrong, I love gaming and think it can be really valuable social time with friends or even enriching if you're playing some good single-player games, but there's just nowhere physical for folks to just hang out without getting fleeced anymore. I'm child-free, but I've noticed that over the past few decades there's nowhere for a teenager to hang out anymore. Shopping malls were big in the 80s and you could stroll around and nobody cared. Try doing that in some big box store. You have public parks and libraries, but even there you'll be bothered by people for sitting there too long, and they're usually way underfunded. You don't even have fun things to do that involve other people these days, since everything is expensive and not catered to young people. I really think this is going to damage the mental health of younger people. COVID and lockdowns and internet schooling are already showing effects, and they are not good. The problem I see is that the vast majority of people are obsessed with the satisfaction of social media. While I don't think social media is a horrible thing, it's hard to argue that it's not easier to just ship all of your clothes to try on to your house and stay home to play games with friends or watch Netflix. We are satisfied by this enough that it won't change. Convenience has won the war. If there were a time for people to go to farmers markets and shop local, now it is more important than ever. The sitting in fields portions of my childhood were immense. So much field action, playing in trees and big hollow bushes, playing with the neighborhood kids. Like, I don't know where half of them went to school. In the neighborhood, everyone was equal. Homeschool kids, religious school kids, public school kids. It was roller skates on the sidewalk. It was acrobatics at the playground. I don't even know what childhood looks like now. I'll find out soon since I have a toddler. It's a little scary. Story 6. Live music. People see big concerts happening and assume live music is doing pretty much as well as it always has. Not true. Small and medium-sized venues are struggling hard. Local bands are struggling hard, and small to medium-sized touring acts are struggling hard. People don't go and seek out live music like they did 20 years ago. Small live music bars with built-in crowds of regulars who would always show up to check out the band of the week used to be commonplace. Today, they are very, very rare. Almost all of my friends are either teachers or musicians. I run merch tables for a couple of local bands. They do lots of bar shows. I'm going to be honest and say that I think the bar scene as a whole is dying. People are drinking less in general. Drinks at the bar are expensive. The only people who come to weeknight shows are either friends of the band or old alcoholics who say dirty crap to me and try to get free merch. Weekends are better, but if you're a headlining local band, be ready for all the friends of the other bands to leave before your set. Plus, you have bands that sneak all their friends in without paying the cover. Even dedicated venues have a harder and harder time. We had a show at a reasonably well-known local punk/metal venue recently, and they just found out they've been hit with an 11 p.m. noise curfew. So you have to push the start time up, line up fewer bands and hound them to get loaded in plus sound-checked in time, plus push a faster turnaround between sets. People have less time to mingle and buy drinks and merch. Overall, it becomes less profitable for them to even host shows. It's rough out here. I toured for 12 years before COVID. I just don't see going back in this climate. Crapping on Ticketmaster is easy, and I love them as little as anyone else, but the reality is more complicated. They are just a platform that artist management can take advantage of. Large bands are capable of selling affordable tickets through Ticketmaster, but they'd be leaving money on the table. So they don't. This is usually taking place in a label office, so you don't have to go hating on your favorite singer. On top of that, it's been the case for decades that if you value your tickets too low, any extra perceived value just gets scooped up by scalpers. The metrics are easier to track, so why not adjust your ticket prices to match the scalping rate? This results in every concert being tuned by the economy to cost right at the maximum you'd be willing to pay. This is in contrast to club bands charging a low fixed cover to build their audience. Another unpopular take, bands are expected to have a big online presence. People don't just hang out in clubs without knowing who's playing anymore. Pretty much nobody goes to see a band without first checking them out online. If the band has no self-made presence, then there will be live videos from the audience. Clubs used to be where you discovered acts. YouTube killed that. So the incubator for new music is the internet, not a local scene, which further reduces the relevance of that club downtown. There is no longer much of a scene, community, or middle ground, just influencers, promoters, and the acts who finally get enough social media presence to get a spot opening festivals or a leg of Live Nation tour. Recently, there was an act coming to town where I am a fan of the act more than the genre. Thought I would be willing to pay $150 to see when he was in town. $450 for nosebleeds plus fees. Nope, even a moderately successful band, AJR, was over $150 per person for my son and me to see the last time they were in town. I really have to love most of the songs on your new album to justify going. If your album is meh, I'm not spending a day's work to see you. 25 years ago, I was at a big venue watching Jimmy Buffett in the rain on the screens above the stage. Couldn't see the stage. Thought to myself, what about this is fun? If you're not there for the energy of the crowd or just love the performer with all your heart, live music is a hard sell as you get older. My wife and I paid $1,200 for 2 tickets to see one of our favorite bands. They're an 80s act and the lead singer is getting up there in age, so we figured we'd splurge as it might be our last chance to see them live. And the seats were good, literally right above the stage, maybe 20 feet from the band. So the day before the show, I go to print the tickets and there's a notice that the tour has been canceled. Apparently the lead singer is checking into rehab. The ticket seller tried to say that we only had a 24-hour window for a refund and that it was no longer possible. They wanted to basically give us a credit for our ticket price that we could then spend on tickets for other upcoming shows. Took a while, but I was able to yell at enough people to get a refund. Ticket sellers are freaking scum. One of the things that has really affected music is the disappearance of a local scene. A few decades ago, new music was generally heard on the radio and each city would have its own take and would allow local bands to get airplay, and local changes to get a foothold up to the big time. You hear a new local band, watch them at a small local venue, and off they go. Now radio is not really a thing, and for the last 20 plus years what radio does exist, even if it's online, is centrally programmed. So unless it's likely to play everywhere, they will not program it. making new music very vanilla. Spotify, Apple Music, etc. have gotten worse every year in terms of their suggestions, and a new sound must fight against a huge behemoth of what is most likely acceptable to the biggest audience. So again, pop music is becoming very bland. The good news is that if you are willing to put in the time and effort, there is a lot going on, and many bands can create their own music without involving the large music companies, and you can find some great stuff. The problem is that the effort involved is beyond what most people are willing to go to. Story 7. Agriculture Industry. I got my degree in agriculture business from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. One serious issue I see is the lack of interest from the next generation. I'm technically a young adult, and I'm basically the only person of my peers on this general career path. What makes this exceedingly shocking is I live in Tulare County, one of the greatest agriculture counties in the world. What often happens is younger people inherit their grandpappy's farm and sell it off to one of the big AG conglomerates like Sunkist, Sun Pacific, Wonderful. There aren't many small farmers left, and their plight is being forgotten. There are a host of other issues, but this is something no one seems to talk about. Many of them are more controversial, like China's agricultural land ownership in the US, but I won't get into those without more prompts. My undergrad background was in classical history. Specifically, my senior thesis was on the mid to late Roman Republic. Arguably, the number one reason it collapsed was for the reason you stated. Small farms were increasingly bought up by the rich senatorial and knight class and consolidated into massive latifundia being worked on by slaves. This led to mass unemployment and mass political instability. One thing you can't forget is many of those small farms were owned by the citizen soldiers who made up the army. The legions of the Roman Republic was pretty much a citizen militia called up in times of war instead of the professional occupation in the later Republic/Empire. When Rome was limited to Italy, this worked fine. Plant crops, go to Rome, fight war in the summer, win, go back home in time for the harvest. But as the empire grew and the campaigns were more distant, the soldiers were away for longer, resulting in lost harvests and debt. As a result, many of them had to sell their property to rich patricians, who were also the senators sending them out to fight, and go into poverty. This reached a crisis around 100 BC when the manpower pool was desperately low. Too many citizen soldiers had lost their property and the means to arm themselves. The solution was for patricians like Marius and Sulla to fund their own armies, beginning the era of the professional legionnaire. The ugliness happened when these legionnaires were more loyal to their generals than to the state. If the Senate declares your general a traitor, who are you going to back? The Senate, made up of the guys that took over your family's farm, or your general who gave you a steady paycheck and guarantee of land when you retire? I love this explanation. I've always understood the two ideas sort of separately. The unsustainable, inequitable transfer of wealth, and the idea that people had to find their other occupations, such as moving to the cities and joining the legions. But the rationale as to how it led to the armed civil conflicts I've never seen explained so clearly. I know it's pretty naive, but when you hear about the Gracchi brothers, for example, who tried to reform things, I always just kind of relied on great man history. To suggest that the people who ended up raising armies and seizing power were just conveniently that much more charismatic consistently enough that those advocating for reform were just unlucky in having a chance to fix things being prevented. But this makes a ton of sense as to why the lay people would have such a significant dog in the fight as well, so to speak. Story 8. Retail Pharmacy. California's complete lack of PBM regulation and corporate greed is going to lead to massive closures across the country. I came here to see who would say retail pharmacy. Corporate greed has led to understaffing. You may wait a long time because your pharmacist is also the technician, the cashier, and answering the phones. The pharmacy is not the fast lane, so we don't have time to ring up your random thing. If you don't see a line, that doesn't mean one does not exist. Our computers are about as fast as AOL in the 90s, and all of the mentally ill people that would have been institutionalized are now semi-medicated and coming to the pharmacy to talk crap, hate on crap, and start crap, whilst we make an attempt to be civil. Also, your wait time is highly dependent on how long it takes for you to explain what needs not be explained. I don't need to know where you came from or how you came to be standing in front of me or your political beliefs, but I do need to know your birthday and what you came to pick up. If you want to berate me because it's not ready, that's additional wait time if I choose to stare and apologize. I would be done by now if you would sit down and not force me to listen to you rant about how incompetent I must be when you are the one who refuses to reach into your carry-on luggage or purse and present your ID for a narcotic or your insurance card. This isn't the NHS. Your insurance changed when you changed jobs, and it's your responsibility to present it. No, I will not call your employer, but these are the things that make the industry a pain in the ass. I'm a tech at a grocery store pharmacy chain and genuinely can't imagine what it must be like for those who work at chains like CVS and Walgreens. We are already barely surviving with corporate cutting our hours and pressuring my boss to meet our vaccination goal. A lot of people don't understand all of the BS pharmacists and techs have to put up with. Constantly being screamed at by patients whose real problem is with their insurance company, but they will refuse to call the insurance company, having to deal with a long line at the register, a phone ringing off the hook that is usually patients who refuse to use our automated phone system or app to call in their refills, people waiting until they are completely out of their maintenance meds to want them filled, and then get angry when we're not able to snap our fingers and have them filled that very minute, corporate breathing down our necks and making sure we're pushing for shots, but wait, why is your script count going down? The patient always comes first. What do you mean your wait times are longer because you only have one pharmacist and they're too busy giving the vaccines? We keep pressuring them to push to every patient. I imagine it's a million times worse at CVS and Walgreens. Techs are severely underpaid and pharmacists are not given the respect they deserve. People treat them like their sole job is to be drug dispensers and completely disregard their education. I use Walgreens as my pharmacy and I try to be extra nice to the techs. I never blame them for anything or yell at them, but I know it's not their fault. The stupid thing is I have to call in to activate any on-file script from one of my doctors who doesn't like doing refills. It's a royal pain for all involved. If their system would just let me fill it out online, then I would, and I prefer that, but no, I just make my calls as brief as possible. Also, as someone who is underpaid under bad management at my own job, I definitely understand what it's like to have a very, very crappy job. The least I can do is to not add to the crap that they're dealing with. I'd also like to switch pharmacies, but Walgreens is open late, and I need that right now. Came here to say this. I'm a pharmacist at a little independent pharmacy. I'll be surprised if we are open a year from now. We are barely keeping our heads above water. Insurance reimbursements are terrible. For example, we lose about $100 on every Wegovy, Ozempic, etc. we fill. Good RX is killing us too. Not only are they cutting our profits, but they typically charge us $8 on every prescription, and now CVS is using its price structure to take money back from us. There is currently a class action lawsuit against PBMs for this. Quit pharmacy a few years ago. It completely crushed my mental health. I was having anxiety and panic attacks regularly, on top of everything everyone else mentioned in this thread. Another point of contention was the corporate people who have never worked in a pharmacy coming up with ideas about how to operate the pharmacy. They come up with new procedures that are mandatory and won't budge on it when we explain how it's not working. For example, they implemented a new messaging system and insisted that we have to ask every patient to sign up to receive these messages. After a little bit, they contacted us and asked why we don't have more people on the messaging service. We explained that we've been asking, but the bulk of our patients are either elderly and don't do messaging, or they are immigrants who don't speak English. What good would it be for them to get messages in a language they don't understand? They pretty much said too bad and told us we had to start signing them up anyway. It's the metrics. As if we aren't already stressed out just trying to keep up with filling prescriptions and helping patients. We get calls from corporate we ran this report and noticed, and proceed to rip on us about arbitrary crap. Story 9. Veterinary medicine. I just got out. The average career is about 5 to 10 years before getting out for techs and assistants, etc. Emotionally, it's taxing, not just because you're dealing with dying dogs every single day, but because management is all business people nowadays and don't know or give a crap about medicine and blame you for not hitting quotas or overspending on supplies/overtime. Pay is low, especially considering student loans taken to be a doctor or have a specialty. Not enough people are going into the field for the above reasons, and those who are don't stay. Suicide rates are some of the highest by trade. We all know someone who has taken their own life, including me. I won't go into specifics for respect. And I don't know any vet med worker who isn't in therapy, self-medicating with alcohol, getting too stoned to feel anymore with weed, or a mix of all three. This is just a brief list of problems. Been a vet assistant in a state without title protection, so performing the same duties as a technician for 8 years now. I have a degree in biology and psychology and completed vet school prerequisites. I have patients I met as puppies coming in for senior wellness exams now. The pay is $18 an hour. I can't afford health insurance. I was a vet tech for 14 years. Over half of that was working emergencies in a busy emergency clinic. I capped out at about $17.50 an hour when I left in 2015, and that was considered high for my area then. $17.50 an hour to do the job of a triage nurse, radiography tech, ICU nurse, pharmacy tech, surgical tech, and receptionist. Oh, and we had to do all of the janitorial work too, rarely breaks or lunch/meal times. I left because I wanted to retire one day. You aren't doing that on a vet tech salary. It's a shame too, because I absolutely loved the actual work I did and was freaking good at it. I just can't justify the mental fatigue and low pay. Wanted to be a vet my whole childhood until my aunt let me volunteer at her emergency vet clinic for a day. After the 4-hour mark, I pretty much went into total dissociation. Never came back. The employees knew I wasn't. It was traumatic. Animals were rape victims. Animals that were used as target practice. Animals that somebody found on the side of the road or had hit, but wouldn't fess up. Brought in and then left. Animals that were absolutely suffering, but their owners told them not to put them down. Animals have painful issues, but you just had to wait until they passed away naturally. People would come in and watch their animals die, would watch a family lose a family member, watch an elderly person lose their only companion, watch a little kid lose their friend. It was awful. My aunt is and was an alcoholic. I think it's the only way she can cope. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you want to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.